Hello and good evening. This is Thursday's Truth Proof live stream brought to you by Digital Creations. Our guest who was lined up earlier on in the week is not available, so we do have a last minute guest and I'm sure you'll enjoy him. You know who it is, it's on the title card. So I've got to do a little bit of housekeeping now at the beginning. We'll just find out who's in the chat and best of all, see if anybody can actually hear me this week. So let's have a look. We've got Mark Rhodes in, Alison Buttle, Lisa Rod, Kelly Shaw, Ralph Windsor, and we've got Deborah Singleton, who is our moderator tonight, and thanks for coming in, Debs. We've got Nick Exploration, The Invited, Joe Weeks. Welcome all to the show. So it's welcome everybody from the UK and around the world to the Truth Proof live stream. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Les. Good to see everybody in the chat. I hope we've got a few new people as well. And great that Chris Turner has stepped in for us tonight, as people will remember if they watched his last time with us on the live stream. I think everybody enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's a bit rushed tonight, but we haven't prepared lots of questions. So if people in the audience want to put some questions in caps to us, we'll gladly address them. But welcome, Chris.
No worries, mate. I'm glad to fill in. It's as you said, with a little bit more time, we'd have definitely planned some up, wouldn't we? So yeah, we'll just bounce a few ideas about and answer a few questions and talk about a few subjects, which we always do. And yeah, let's see what happens.
I think so. Before we get into anything, let's ask Les if he's got any questions from last week, because they'll apply to you as much as other guests that didn't manage to answer them. You know, we had to finish at 9 o'clock kind of thing.
Ah, right then, Paul. I was going to ask them later on in the show.
Right, we'll leave them till later on in the show then, Les. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, because they'll probably time with everything that we're talking about. Okay, guys.
Yeah, that works. Yeah. Well, basically then, tell us about any projects that you're working on at the moment, Chris, or you intend working on in future.
Well, strangely enough, Paul, not a lot has happened since we last spoke, other than a few interviews I've had done for the Reptilian thing, which is way in front now. It's just this whole virus thing has just kiboshed everything. I don't know whether it's me and whether it's just me, that motivation as well has been an issue. You know, yeah. Sometimes, we should really be using this time, shouldn't we, to really get things done. But all I've seemed to do is do stuff on the house and work. And
it is difficult, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think if I had, it's the locations that I have to visit are across the country. So sadly, I mean, I did the Winter Hill thing, and there's stuff going on with Winter Hill. There's a few witnesses from there that I've got to follow up with as well, because the part 2, people had been asking me last week about the part 2 of that I've been doing with some more UFO sightings, a couple of historic ones as well, and a bit of footage. And I'll get onto that, but it's just a matter of squeezing, just trying to fit this in between all the other projects that I've got going on, mainly work, to be honest.
Well, what better place to begin then? If you fill people in on Winter Hill, a little bit about what you've been looking into. I believe you've done a bit with Lee Roscoe, and is it Mick McLaren?
Yeah, I believe. Mick and Lee. I think it was predominantly their research up there. I mean, I don't know whether Lee was involved early doors. I think he was. I think I heard about that via Mick's video. I think that he put up on his channel about the sheep killings. Now, of course, off of the back of that bit of research that we did up there, or you did, and we did the film up there about the 60, I think I saw sheep that were being killed up there. I thought it was a very interesting thing to look at. Circumstances quite different, but I'm in touch. I don't know whether Chris is watching. There's a lad from Scotland where he's now investigating some killings up there. So the whole sheep killing thing seems to be, I think it's happening constantly. I don't think, I used to think that this thing went in patterns. And I don't, we don't claim to know specifically what it is that's doing it. And I think there are multiple causes, if I'm honest. Some of them are quite normal, like dog attacks, for example. But I certainly think the cat attacks can definitely be thrown in there. And I think if you've been looking at the newspapers, there's a few mainstream articles coming up now, isn't there, about how people are accepting of these big cat killings. And I personally think I don't think it's going to be long until they have to really officially say that they're out there. I don't think they can contain this anymore, because I think the sheep killings in particular are going to be the smoking gun, because it just seems to be happening more and more. And I don't know whether it's the case that these cats are just getting used to this, and it's just becoming a staple meal. Because really, sheep is for a cat, you know, a good size big cat. They're easy prey, really. Much more so than a deer. And I know that even off the back of the Wildman research, you know, where people say that, you know, the Wildman of Britain likes to prey on deer. Now we don't know that for certain, but I would imagine that if he is preying on food, then the sheep would be a much easier prey, because they're much easier to catch, much more of them. We know that I think last time I checked a couple of years ago, I think it was between 10 and 12,000 sheep a year go missing. For whatever reason, they're the ones that they're officially putting forward. We know that not all these animals are tagged, so it could be way more. It probably is way more that are going missing. Now, of course, they do just wander off and fences get broken and damaged and there are poachers. But then I still think you've got like the UFO sightings and cryptid sightings. There will be a percentage of those that are absolutely genuine and that are unknowns, or what they'll call them unknowns. I think we and a lot of the farmers and the landowners and the vets who are attending these killings, if they do indeed attend them, because I don't think they do very often. From what I remember when I were up there with you, they would just get slung into the bin for collection, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think it. I think from what I hear off Chris, I know that the police have attended some of these scenes.
Are these the Scotland ones?
Yeah. So. And some of them are quite mysterious. And Chris, he's in the infancy of that research, because much like I found, and I know you found, these rural, remote areas, no one wants to talk about this stuff. Even if it's a big cat, it's not really anybody else's business. You know, I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of farmers near urban societies, I know for a fact that the sheep suffer a lot of maulings by dogs. So I suppose that's an easy road to go down. Whereas if you're a lot more remote, trying to claim that this is a canine, a dog, a domestic pet doing this with some of the wounds that these animals sustain, that's going to be a lot harder. And I think that's probably the reason that this has remained under the radar for so long. I know there's a few more people looking into this, a few more wildlife experts looking into it, and now the media have got hold of this. This isn't like the UFO cases used to be, where they would run the odd story. I think it's quite an interesting story for the mainstream tabloids and stuff to run, and certainly in wildlife magazines. I think it's with the rewilding of some areas and wolves and the talk of all that stuff, and lynx. I think I've heard them talking about reintroducing. So, yeah, I don't think it's long before they actually admit that that's the case.
Well, first-hand experience, myself and Bob Brown, we've actually seen one on the lane coming out of Bempton. And there's no doubt that in those forests in North Yorkshire, and probably in a lot of quite remote locations, myself and Les did a bit of filming up North Yorkshire. Les will probably tell you what date, but 3 or 4 months ago. And I don't say we caused suspicion, but an old lady farmer sort of looked down the road and asked us what we were doing. I think I said we're minding his own business. And then I thought better of it and went and explained what we were doing, expecting her to just fall about laughing. And I don't know that it were her daughter, but there were a younger woman with her, and she'd have been in her 50s. And she said, she was tending to her sheep. And I don't mind saying location, because I think it were up around Harwood Dale. She said, and very close to where she's working with these sheep, she said she just looked, and in the gauze, she could see 2 black feet. And she said, and I just looked, and there's a panther or a black leopard. You know, it's just looking at her in the gauze. And she was quite adamant about what she'd seen. I mean, we were talking about the other sightings and the cryptid type things. And apart from hearing strange noises, she'd got nothing to add from that. But it were interesting, a random conversation, and this woman just comes out with this story. And we're hearing more and more of it. I mean, myself and Chris Wright, we went into one of the forests last week. Absolutely wore me out, to be honest with you. But we did 12 miles up and down these ravines. But in between the ravines, there's a field with, I don't know, 40, 50 sheep grazing. What was interesting, behind a broken stone wall, there were 6 sheep carcasses. And I don't mean 6 all killed at the same time. How did we know there were 6? Because we found 6 skulls initially, but there were one in a state of being eaten. There were another one that had in a slightly worse state, and the rest of them were just fleece and bones. But they were adults, and there's lambs in fields. So you've got 6 fully grown ewes. And I won't say dragged away, because I'm trying to put that image into listeners' mind. But they're behind this stone wall. They've not got trapped there and died. They could have easily got in, but they've tucked away. I mean, we were looking for an easy route out at ravine, and that's when we found them. And that was, as well as finding various actual sheep skulls in the forest. Bearing in mind, there's a barbed wire fence running around edge of forest. Sheep don't jump barbed wire fences. It's interesting, to say the least. Now, these sheep in Scotland, unless you can't tell us too much, are they in a remote area, or is the roads close?
I don't know whether there are roads close, but what I can, from the little that Chris has that we've conversed about, I am going doing some filming with Chris I think it's at the beginning of August for Elusive 2. But I think he is in quite remote areas, because Chris does a lot of fell walking and a lot of running.
Right.
He's a fit lad, which is why I better get himself in shape, because the filming trip that we're planning, Jerry's coming along as well. Jerry's my mate, he's a cameraman. We got to get ourselves into some sort of shape, because from the last Scotland trip, this terrain is it's if you've been sat on your backside in an office for 18 months like I have been, whereas when you're out filming, you like yourself, you've said it yourself, haven't you, Paul? You'd be covering miles every day, usually. At least 3, 4, 5 days a week. Yeah, but now when you don't, you realise that you're gonna have to get yourself into some sort of shape. So I know that Chris, I think a lot of these places are quite remote, which is, it kind of makes sense in a way. And I suppose in terms of anything, obviously we're conversing, because obviously I'm going up there filming about the wild man. How much information Chris will have about that type of phenomena when I get to speak to him in person, I don't know, but he's certainly looking into it. I mean, even for Elusive 2, that the big cat thing, off the back of the big cat film that's been released, I think this year, anytime soon. I think, I can't remember the name of the company that released it. I think it's a really interesting phenomenon. I think people will be definitely interested. And as you know, you caught one on thermal, didn't you?
Yeah.
And that just goes to show how important the thermal kit is, doesn't it? Because without that kit, you just wouldn't have seen it.
We would have never have got it, no. And I mean, I've only put some stills up of it, but when you actually see it move down and start going downfield, there's no mistaking that that's what it is. And I mean, we've got lots of things. I've got better films of the light forms. I don't mean I've got the smoking gun that's going to sort of prove the existence of UFOs, but I've got better footage of them. But I kind of just sit on stuff. There'll be a time and a place to use it. Do you know what I mean? And if you don't want to talk about the sheep anymore, and don't let me stop you, but what are you going to do with Elusive that's different to the last one?
Well, that's a tricky one. First of all, the big cats, because I think, look, let's be realistic. When we found this, and I've found this with the UFO films that I've tried to do in the past, I think there is somewhat of an expectation with these cryptid films, even though bar Todd Standing's film and the extreme, 4K footage that he got of these alleged Sasquatch. Obviously, the jury's out on that, whether you believe Todd Standing or whether you don't. I mean, the guy can't win either way. I mean, he produces 4K footage that everybody's been asking for, and when he does it, it's a fake. Had he produced a load of blurred images, he would have got the same response. And I guess that ties into that. It ties in a little bit into, we'll get onto that shortly, about the video that I made recently talking about evidence and the quality of photographic and video evidence. But let me just go back to the Winter Hill thing, because this might feature, because I've got a sighting of well, I don't know what it's of. It sounds like a winged humanoid from Winter Hill, or one side of Winter Hill, at a place called, it's near the Wilton Arms, and it's on Blackburn Road. And it's quite near to where Mick McLaren, one of the witnesses that Mick McLaren spoke to, saw a metallic craft coming out of the tree line and traversing the road, and it just went off over to Winter Hill. So it's just yet again in that area something very odd where the witnesses, this is like 1966, 67 perhaps, and they were up there courting. This couple were up there courting with other friends, and obviously they're up there for a little bit of privacy, and this is like a small quarry. And they said that they heard that what sounded like, if in their minds, this is the way they described it, and that's all I can do is just tell you the way they described it. He said it sounded like massive wings flapping, very slowly, just flapping, and so loud that they could hear it from where they were near the car. And this is it's probably about 150 yards away. So to hear that sound at 150 yards, maybe it's probably closer to 200 yards away. To hear that sound, anyway, they get out of the car and walk up there. This is late at night, so it's dark. They get up there, get up to the top of the quarry, and you've got to be careful. There's no fence on. I mean, this is late 60s. I don't know the exact date just yet. I've got to meet the guy. I'm hoping he'll speak to me. I know his daughter very well. She's given me the sighting. I spoke to him when I was dating her, which is a long time ago. So that's how I remembered the sighting and got back in touch with her. They've got to the top of the quarry, look down onto the quarry. They can see this thing in the dark flapping its wings, huge, enormous thing. This thing then leaps off the top of the quarry into the quarry, glides into the quarry with the wings widespread, huge wingspan, enormous thing, and just glides off down over the hills. And obviously the first question is, well, what was it? What do you think it was? And he just said, I have no idea what he said. If I had to guess what it was, he said, I think it was a pterodactyl. So who knows? And credit to the guy, he didn't say, he just said, look, it was dark. The little that I could see, this isn't a bird dark in the middle of the night. The wingspan on this thing was absolutely enormous. Now, obviously Thunderbird or whatever's going to get thrown at this. And of course, there's probably, to add to that, there's probably some more details, because I know the same group of kids, if you like, teenagers, they would have been in the late teens, saw other UFOs and all sorts of stuff up there. So it'd be great if I can get that sighting, because I know there's one particular very scary incident that one of his mates talks about. But he said at the time, I remember him saying, there is no way he would ever talk about this, because he was terrified, this guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, it just goes to show that I don't know whether it's location. I know we keep saying location is key, but this area...
I really do think it's a lot of these things are location based, and it's the multi-phenomena. Like you've just alluded to there, you're talking about this winged, whatever it was, pterodactyl. I don't know whether it's some kind of imprint or echo from another age that's playing through. I don't know, but there's definitely something happening, because they said there's UFO sightings there, and who knows what else. And it's, I don't know if anybody remembers, or if you remember even, Chris, but the little coppice of woodland that juts out into the field at Danes Dyke, that you've walked through it with me.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I told you, well, it could be back in 2014, 15, as well as hearing strange metallic kind of high-pitched sounds and getting pulled backwards in there when I was taking photographs. One day I was in there and I heard a sound like huge wings. And I likened it, though, to washing on a line, just, on a windy day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I've told a few people, I've no visions or sightings of anything to add to it. But just to stay on this, providing you're okay for a moment, I spoke at length on camera to a guy in Jersey who's got his own sighting of a huge bird. This guy's called Roland, and he's sat at home I think, believe on his balcony years ago. I didn't know we would be talking about this. I said, I have an exact year. And it's evening, and there's looking at some trees in the distance, about 40 or 50 foot tall. And as he's looking, he hears a flap of what he perceives to be a wing. And then this thing just comes straight up above the trees, splays the wings out and stays stationary. And he can't believe what he's looking at. And he's got the open balcony window open, and he's sat there. His wife's in the room with another flap. It flies straight at the balcony, or he says it does. And he's got a side view of this thing. And he's looking at, he says it's huge. He believed, I asked him how big it would be if it was stood on its feet or legs, because he didn't see feet, he didn't see legs. And he believed it would have been 12 foot tall. He said if you look at a polar bear when they've got that dirty yellow colour on them, when there's no ice and they're still searching for food, it says that's the colour. It looked like it had got fur. Its wings looked like leather, like black leather. And he got I'm not saying feet sighting, but he got, as in feet away, he got a sighting, I would estimate, within 8 and 10 feet away from him. He said his eyes were huge, like big black dinner plates, and it had a face like a parrot. And it terrified him absolutely, and it absolutely terrified him. And something was telling him, and we're not talking about mind speak, but he believed something was telling him not to look at it. Don't look at it. And so that's his sighting. And he says, and it were almost freeze frame. It said to stop. And with another flap, it had gone. And so that's Jersey. That's
It does make you wonder, doesn't it, when people talk about tulpas and how this phenomena manifests wearing so many different masks.
Mm.
I mean, this obviously I'm going to get more detail when I speak to the guy himself. I mean, I know it's a long time ago; it's 50 years ago or so. So I'll do the best I can and get as much detail as I can. Albeit, obviously, we know this sighting's in the dark. But for me, I've no interest in bloody. I like the cryptids, but I've never looked into any type of flying cryptid. I had no interest in it whatsoever, and it just goes to show that yet again these things just drop into your lap. Because I'd forgotten about that. This was I think I was 18 when I was seeing this girl. It's a long time ago, and then I don't know. So I think it was one of the Small Town Monsters documentaries. Might have even been one of the Mothman documentaries that they did. Just triggered this memory. So I messaged her the day after, and she said, "Yeah, I remember it. I know about it." So, and again from the Winter Hill video that I did last time, one of the guys. This is weird. One of the guys that I used to work with at a place in West Orton, which is right around the corner from Winter Hill, again 25 years ago. He said, he remembered me from work. He saw me on the YouTube channel and said, "You know what? I've got some sightings from those kids that we had a UFOs on Winter Hill." So again, I've got to follow up with him. So it's not like that's without really even trying.
Yeah, I mean, if we start lifting stones,
exactly.
And you're going to find more. I mean, I think it were only today looking on social media on somebody, my name was tagged in something, and somebody said, "Fancy." It were almost sarcasm. "Fancy so many sightings in Bempton and that area, and only Paul Sinclair knows about them." And like I rarely reply back, but I did. I said, well, on strength of 4 books, probably hundreds of first-hand accounts. You need to lift your head from under the pillow, because there's a lot more people know about them. It's just that people don't want to talk about this stuff. But it's almost like a snowball. Once you start lifting them stones, Chris, you will gather more information. It will, as you know. I'm not telling you don't know. You do it, and it will.
No, you're right. I think the only missing element with this, and I think everyone investigating up there and in that and around that area, the Roddlesworth is another area that I looked at that's not too far from there either. White Coppice is another area. Unless you've got like loads and loads of time on your hands, it's very difficult to get to the actual to realize how much phenomena is going on up there. I mean, the next step would really to be go knocking on the farmers' doors. And again, you'll know how tricky that is.
It's awkward. You get turned away. You knock on 10, you're going to get turned away by probably 10 of them. You know what I mean? You might have to knock on 20 to speak to one.
Yeah,
It's like all communities, even fishing communities, mining communities. You've almost got to know these people and have a friend in that community who's respected, who knows that you're half decent to get a foot in the door. One sec, Chris. We'll just ask Les if he's got any questions now, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's been really interesting up to now. Thanks, guys. We've got a question from, let me have a look. Yes, it's from Carly van den Bosch. What triggered Chris's interest in reptilians, and who are they, and where are they from? Kaylee's asking. That's a good question. How long have we got, guys, on that one?
Yeah, well, this is the whole thing. I mean, Kaylee, how long have you got? Because initially, the first film that I made about the reptilian phenomena went into it completely, very much similar to the cryptid thing. Went into that subject like a little bit blasé, thinking that there was not a lot to this phenomena, and we can get to the bottom of this in a few months. Trilogy was sparked from a 1-year investigation into that, speaking to hundreds of witnesses. I mean, again, I was into ufology at that time, and all you hear about, and it's probably still the same now, are grey aliens. It's just, oh, we want to talk, it's the greys. And there was this huge taboo and sort of like almost a loathing of anything that wasn't that. And I think that was deliberate. My personal thoughts after all this time are, and I've spoken to enough witnesses with, again, this is a tricky word, credibility, if you want to use that. What dictates credibility these days is anyone's guess. But in the end, I think if they've got some sort of military background and they're willing to disclose details on that background and that kind of thing, all right, it isn't concrete, but it's something in terms of observational skills that it lends into a little bit strength in that regard. So I got into it through a friend who was into David Icke. Just an absolute wild theory. I think I saw him on Richard and Judy, and it was just, but something about what he was saying, for whatever reason, maybe just because I'm into weird, these topics are all weird. And this is what I'm getting at. Why is the reptilian subject, think about it, why is that any more weird than Bigfoot? Or any more weird than a grey alien? What is it about this subject that people just don't want to listen to it? And that's what triggered the film. And then I started speaking to witness after witness after witness. Then came the cultural worship of these serpent deities all over the world, particularly South America. And actually now in North America, and they're uncovering stuff in North America about it. And then as time passes by, you meet characters like Pierre Sabak, who I know you're going to get on the show, and you look into that 15-year, just what is an academic study on the seraphim, which is the serpent deities and all that sort of thing. So you can get yourself, this is what happened, you get yourself into a right hole with that stuff, because it just goes and goes and goes. And as it happens, it's like a bit of a thread, if you like. And I think that's one of the attractive things about it, in terms of, one, the taboo nature of it, and two, how connected it actually is into all these ancient cultures, ancient worship, blood sacrifice, magic, demons, the devil, jinn. All this sort of stuff leads back to these guys. And then I was speaking to witnesses who were, what they were doing is they were going through the hypnosis with various people, people like John Mack, for example. And he was peeling back these screen memories, or he was actually the guy investigating the phenomena. But other I don't know what the word is, therapists were peeling back these memories, and behind layer upon layer of these grey aliens, they were revealing these snake-looking, in some cases alligator head-looking things. But what, and then off the back of that, you can then go, if you want to, into paleontology, where I think there's a study back in the 80s and 90s by a guy called Dale Russell that as a thought experiment theorized what would have happened to the dinosaurs from 65 million years ago, if that's the right time. That might even be further back than that. If they had gone underground and evolved like we did, what would have happened? And although it was only a thought experiment, it did receive a lot of interest from colleagues. Of course, there's pros and cons to the theory, and it is just a theory. But much like humanoids, they figured out that there would be a humanoid being because it's the right body type and to carry a large brain. So, you know, a lot of guys in this field have sort of run with that and said, well, you know, we've developed space technology, so surely the reptilians are in space, and that's where that crazy. Oh, I shouldn't say that. It's not that crazy, is it? Think about it. It's not that crazy. I mean, we're here sat talking about werewolves, dogmen, and nothing's crazy in this anymore. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it, and you can see just by those little snippets that I gave you, you can get yourself into dark places as well with that research as well. So yeah, it's a fascinating subject.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Joe Weeks is asking. It's a good question. That actually was that one. Joe Weeks is asking: do Paul and Chris think some sightings could be servals? Have I said that right? Or savannah cats?
Well, for me personally, I'll just take this first, Chris. If somebody's telling me that they can see something like a black leopard or a panther, I don't think we're looking at a serval or a savannah cat. You know, is it melanistic? How do we pronounce it? The leopard. It's the black one with it's imprinted the prints in it, but it's black fur primarily. But it's nothing like a serval or a savannah cat. That's not to say, though, Joe, that people haven't let those cats, exotic cats, out, and that they're actually thriving and doing well in the United Kingdom. I'm in no doubt that there's a lot more of these cats than people are letting on. I mean, one particular, I wouldn't say witness, unwilling witness, a friend of Chris's, Chris Wright, once again, was, you know, I was laughing at Chris or having a bit of a laugh with him when he was talking about the things he'd seen in the forests of North Yorkshire, and Chris had been speaking about the cats, and he rings him up out at blue, seen one. It ran across road in front of us. Raincliffe Woods, I believe it was. You know, I mean, that's just out of Scarborough, and that's only a few months ago. You know, all right, all we're doing is dealing, as Chris knows, as Les knows, and most of the people in that chat, it's anecdotal evidence. The actual proof, when, you know, we get the people, the good people say everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a smart camera nowadays. Why aren't we getting quality pictures? As Chris just spoke about earlier, Todd Standing, there's some absolutely incredible pictures of an alleged Bigfoot. We've got to say it's an alleged Bigfoot because there's a lot of people saying that it's fake. I don't know. I've got no sort of opinion either way, but we can't win. Because if you come with a blurry photograph, why can't we get a clear one? If we come with a clear photograph, it's fake. Right, the cats, Chris, sorry.
No, I'd second pretty much everything you've said there. I mean, we've said that before, and I think that makes sense. I think, of course, people have released these savannah cats out there and from what I understand, I think nature finds a way anyway, and there's certainly the possibility that these cats could be breeding. I don't know. Again, just an area that I'm not really qualified to. In fact, I don't think any of us are qualified in that regard to talk about the breeding and the breeding populations, etc. But certainly, in my understanding, they'll find a way. And but just back to the Todd Standing thing, Paul, quickly. My opinion about the Todd Standing things, just off the back of my filmmaking, is that where is the footage before and after?
Yeah, good point. Unless he's got it and he's sat on it, you know.
Look, I will never know, and I'm not going to call the guy out because I just don't know. My opinion is, all right, Todd, look, if it's real, mate, just let us see the shots that led up to it, because as you know, there's no way he's got that camera on there and it's just captured that and it's nice and steady, and there's no other footage of anything. Let's see it if that's the case, because I think that would pretty much. I think a lot of people would love to see that. Be a game changer.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Just before we leave the cats, I've just noted that Andy or Andre was doing our moderation in chat with Deborah. He's had a big cat sighting. He told me about it extensively years and years ago. So I mean, afterwards, I'm sure he'd want to tell him about it because I've just noted that he brought it up then. Right, Les, any more questions?
Yes, we've got a question from Alison Buttle. Welcome to the show, Alison. Have you had many reports on the Thunderbird sightings? I guess that's for you, Chris.
No, I mean, I've no doubt. I think with this particular sighting I had of this guy whatever this thing is in the quarry. Again, it's just not an area that I've looked into, so I'd have to get myself familiar with that sort of research, and probably a guy to speak to about this is Andy McGrath, because I know that that's one of the things Andy covers. I've never come across anything like that in the last, I think it's 13, 14 years now that I've been looking. It's just never, not in the UK.
Great. Right. I've got a great question now. Thanks for that, Alison, by the way. That was a great question. A question from Wandering the North, and this is a good one, and I would have asked this if it hadn't come up tonight. Does the NFU have a list of livestock attacks?
Well, they may have. I mean, but are we going to be privy to it? You know, I mean, I know there was a few sheep. We'll call them. I'm reluctant to call them mutilations, but that's the common word for them. In Wilsthorpe a few years ago, and that was around 2009, and DEFRA were involved, and people came to look at it, but the farmer didn't get to know results of what were happening, or what. Do you know? I mean, what are your views on that, Chris?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you know what? I think it's like look at it like any community, if you will. It's like look at the researchers in this field, for example. We live in our own little box, if you like. You know, when I'm out there, and because I work for a living, I do this. So when I'm out shopping, or I'm out there in public, or whatever I'm doing, that's just like, it's a bit like the Matrix to me. Yeah. We are actually in like a two. These people are holding conversations that I am just not interested in, and they're probably vice versa. Yeah. So they're all little private little communities where people in the community are privy to it and interested in it. And if you're not, you're not. And how many times have we heard, Paul, the farmers just blasé? I just threw the bloody thing in the bin.
Not even. Just stay with Wilsthorpe 1 second. I know a farmer there that shot a black cat. I didn't see it. He didn't have a picture of it. His interest was, I just dumped it. So he's killing my livestock. It's got to go. That's all he's bothered about. These people aren't bothered about UFOs, alien big cats, or cryptids. If it's affecting their living, they want an answer to what's doing it, and if they can eradicate it, they will. And they don't want their land made a thoroughfare by people. I wouldn't say like myself, although I sound like I'm trying to be some kind how different. But that's the reason I've kept these locations out of the domain, should we say, because I know for a fact that loads of people wouldn't be paying the respect that I've been paying for years and years going up to these places. Do you know? And you know where this spot is, and you've never said where it is, and Les does. But you've got to keep it. You've got to respect the people that are telling you the information, aren't you? Or sharing the information.
Yeah, it's just part of the game, and if you do that, then you hope that they're going to entrust you. If ever they do come across anything, that you're the guy they're going to come to, and they clearly do. Yeah,
and more or less.
Yeah, I'll come in with a couple more questions in this little session. Does Chris feel that these flying creatures are dimensional beings? Back to the flying creatures.
Yeah, well,
it's created a bit of interest.
I think obviously there's a huge difference between alien big cats and flying cryptids, and you might, if you at a stretch, I don't know where I'm at with it at the moment, but the dog man, for example, you might say that sort of fits in the same box, whereas I don't know. Do you know what? Isn't it? And this is an example of how strange this is. Whereas, because there's a little bit of mythology around the wild man, or the wood horse, or the green man, and there's that little bit of, even though many people think it's the nature spirit and all the rest of it, isn't it funny how that's a little bit more acceptable to us than this dog-headed man, shall we say?
Well,
even though you've started to uncover little bits of shamanic practices that talk about these beings, even though dog-headed beings go way back into antiquity, way further back than Egypt, and that kind of thing. It's really weird, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, in terms of whether they're supernatural, when I think of winged beings and humanoids, obviously Mothman is the thing, and the red eyes and the supernatural, and then the, what do they call it, where it warned them of potential doom.
Yeah.
On the way.
the Mothman, I mean, has anybody described its face? I mean, couldn't we be dealing with the same thing? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's various descriptions of the
Yeah.
Mothman, and I think it depends which decade it was seen in. Because all of the John Keel, the stuff that he was looking into, there's Mothman, who was actually a very small part, wasn't he, of that? I know you've watched that doc, haven't you?
Yeah.
And I've read the book. There's a lot more going on in that town at the time, and I think maybe this is where researchers like ourselves and all you guys out there in the chat that do all this stuff, this is why it's important. And it just seems like, to some it's a hobby, to some it's a job, to some it's I don't know, whatever, a fascination, actually.
Well, earlier, Chris, I mean, you said when you were talking about reptilians, we just jump back to that for a moment. You were saying, why is it more acceptable for the Bigfoot to be a possible existence than a reptilian? And I think we've just hit on it there, because it is possible that there could be a flesh and blood mammal, huge by its descriptions, in these forests, in these remote parts in America. I don't see it in UK myself, but and there's people that'll disagree with me, and hands up, that's your choice. But that's more acceptable, I think, than the reptilian. And I'm not saying that the reptilian is not a possibility and does not exist. Not when I've written a book like that. And do you know what I mean? It's just crazy. But I think that's the reason, because people can see the possibility of a huge fur-covered mammal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, obviously, there's the pop culture thing with Harry and Henderson's, and then the Boggy Creek and all that. I think that does play into it. The grey alien is part of pop culture, so I get, it's not like I'm dismissing that pop culture plays a part. The X-Files, when that came out, sightings went through the roof. So there is like public phenomenons, for whatever reason, that do influence it. But we're talking about things that have been around long before. TV and
it's
radio.
like you touched on earlier, and I don't mean people haven't done their history, because a lot of people will have. But when you said like the dog-headed beings have been around probably longer than the Egyptians, are we talking about things that I think they call them, the cynocephali?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that, and these were dog-headed races. And I think Columbus claimed to have seen a dog-headed race, and various eminent thinkers around the world in Greece, and they claim to have encountered, and the Romans, dog-headed races of people. And it's there. It's not just me talking about it and thinking somebody's wrote this in a comic. It's there in ancient history. If people want to look at it. And it's amazing, really, that it's not new. It's not new.
No, and looking, sorry, I'll just get off this point in a minute, but looking back at history and just looking at that huge amount of research Pierre Sabak did on using etymology and going back into all different types of cultures, what you realize is that these cultures have their own language, and it's a bit like today's society. There are, believe it or not, there are echelons of humans that are separate from us. You want to call them the elite, call them what you want. These guys have their own language. They're not interested in England's result yesterday, I can tell you that. These guys function and live in a completely different world than we do. Things like the stuff Aleister Crowley was into, for example, the magic thing, whatever that is, and it's a world that I think there's a guy, Chris Everard, is a filmmaker that does a lot on that stuff, and I keep meaning to get in touch with Chris and speak to him about this stuff. But it's, as you know, Paul, it's tricky to get people to talk about this magic stuff.
Yeah.
And two, it's a very specialized subject, very specialized. We can take witness reports all day, anyone can do that. But getting into that, it's almost like a bit of an academic practice, isn't it?
Well, Chris, when we worked on Bringing Down the Light, we went to speak to a guy who'd got a lot of knowledge about that. And he was guarded to point. We spoke about it before, to be, it was fear, weren't it? About what he actually told us.
It was fear of, I think there was two parts of fear, if I'm honest. I think one of them was, I think he was fearful for us because I don't think it's something you can just do and get into.
No.
And without any knowledge or expertise or guidance. And this isn't all bad, by the way. I think that goes for any sort of magical practice that you want to get yourself into. From what I understand, again, I'll probably speak for you, Paul, we're not versed in how this stuff works.
Well, I'm not at all.
So, yeah, I think if you're going to get into that stuff, from the little bit that he did disclose to us, there were warnings there to be very careful about, one, who you speak to about it, how you go about it, and who you investigate.
Well, he were even giving me advice on how much I should talk about it outside of the area that we were actually looking at.
Yeah,
because the area we was looking at, we'll not go into details about locations, it had actually stopped happening, but it was happening in other areas. And he said, if you start bringing them areas up, you'll find that you're in bother.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like hobbies. It's a bit like take any hobby you want, pick one randomly out of the sky, a train spotting, for example. It's its own little community. And that's what these guys are like. You're into that stuff. It's just a little bit more secretive than train spotting.
Yeah.
It's for a specific group. It tends to be, I think that kind of stuff you're invited in, much like this. If you go back in the day, like the ancient priests, for example, just something as simple as the eclipses. The people in the village thought that this was magic because the high priest would warn them if
he got the knowledge.
I'm going to make this happen. I know when they were astrologers. They knew exactly when it was going to happen. The guy that was feeding the pigs had no idea about this. You do what we say, and it's the old knowledge is power type thing.
Yeah, very good. Just one thing, but Les, before you say hotels, because otherwise I'll forget and then I'll be in trouble. I want to just say, have a great holiday to Don and Barbara in Shetland, because Don's the guy who helps me with the books and gets over most of my absolutely terrible grammar and bad punctuation. So have a great time, Don. And anybody who wants the books, and that's because I don't say this often enough, I think I would do. If anybody's new in the live stream and you hear me banging on about the books, this will be first time, really. So anybody who wants the books, I'd preferably visit the Truth Proof website, truthproof.uk, and the books are available on there, because we're having I won't say problems with Amazon, but due to changes within Europe and things like that, it's becoming awkward, sort of get distributing the books, should we say. So I'd just like to say that, and just a big thank you to Don, and enjoy your holiday. Sorry to break in there, guys. Les, fire away.
Yes, and by the way, that last question was from The Invited. So welcome to the show, The Invited. And yeah, question from John Carpenter. Chris, who is the cryptid researcher up in Kielder Forest? I don't know if you know.
That would be Fell Wanderer. You'll find him on YouTube. He's called Fell Wanderer. His first name's Damien.
Okay, that's
how you're talking about.
Yeah, and another one from The Invited. Is Chris aware of the strange creatures seen recently in the New Forest in Hampshire?
No.
Okay, that's fair enough. And one from Janice Parry. Welcome to the show, Janice. Chris, do you think there is a connection that dates back to the Anunnaki and the Sumerian gods to all these weird creatures we witness? Does that make sense?
It's possible, but I think if you're going to do that, and I know we're gonna talk about the disclosure stuff in a while, and we can get it. This, interestingly enough, will lead back to that, because ultimately, when you're talking about the Sumerians and that sort of stuff, like who allegedly birthed culture 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, whatever you talk, we know, even just scratching the surface, your everyday desk dwelling archaeologists can find out that civilization goes way back further than that, and written language goes back way further than that. So with the Anunnaki stuff, it's interestingly enough, there's in the reptilian research, there's a sort of belief about it really comes from, I don't know whether you're familiar with Credo Mutwa, who's the Zulu shaman. He talks about two brothers and the Zulu creation myth and all that sort of stuff. But these two Zulu brothers were at war, but at the same time, that ties in with the Anunnaki and Enlil and Enki, the brothers who were, they call them the bearded gods, if you like, and they're often depicted with flowing blonde hair, which we know is often how these things are depicted. That's not sometimes not how they look. But if you just look at where we come from, if you're still following the Darwin model, I think very soon, and it might come off the back of this disclosure thing that's coming in the next 10 years, very drip drip. I think they're going to reveal our connection to these beings, however they want to play it. When we're going to get to the actual beings and past the UAPs or the UFOs, this could be way off. Yeah, but I certainly think that they tie into a lot of genetic experiments, if you like, one of them being us. And whether it was the Anunnaki, if this is just a name, whether it's those guys that created us, who knows? Again, it's all this anecdotal stuff, just woven into mythology, but yet woven into every culture across the globe. So yeah, there's definitely something in that. And it's, look, if they made us, there's a huge possibility that they created any number of. I mean, just look at the number of species on Earth, and I think it's billions, isn't there? And that's just the ones we know about. Obviously, we haven't explored the oceans hardly. So yeah, I mean, we haven't even touched onto what's on the planet that's allegedly, See, this is what happens when you discover a new species, for example. It's just deemed, oh well, it's on Earth. There's none of these conversations happen with, and again, I think look at the squid. I know we've touched on that before, and everybody touches on the squid, but just look at it. Like, look at the octopus. Was it 8 brains, one in each arm? Is it one in each leg, whatever? Just bizarre creatures that live in the oceans. I still think they know very little about sea life in general, just because we haven't explored the oceans. And anything that sort of go back into anything that goes against the Darwin model, the likes of us are just not going to be privy to that. Similar to the UAP stuff. The aerospace get hold of that stuff, and we find about it, and they disclose, oh, look at this plane we've had for 15 years.
What are your thoughts then, Chris, on the release of these Pentagon, the UFO report, and the videos that we've been able to see, the footage?
Yeah, I think anyone that's into ufology and has been following it for the last 10, 15 years or whatever, even 10, 15 years, you've been following it for a lot longer than that, you'll know that this is just publicity stunts and just more manipulation by the same people that manipulate everything that you see out there. It's just theatre, all this. Again, I mean, I see a lot of guys into this subject follow NASA, and again, my opinion of NASA is, look, this is just for public consumption. It's just look at the history of NASA, who NASA is.
Do you think it would, the fact that via social media, via public awareness and people putting out footage, not all of it's going to be fake or CGI, that these people have had to say, look, let's move the goalposts a little bit more. We're going to have to tell them something, because it's gathering pace. Or do you think it's none of that?
Yeah, I think those that have been looking into disclosure, I think I mentioned this before, has sort of already happened anyway for those that really get down into the data and the history of this. But if you just let's take the sightings, for example. Don't forget that much like all of this stuff, it's a need-to-know basis. And when they're training these pilots, for example, the pilots are not aware that this is a drill. They might not, all right, they know it might be a drill, for example, but they don't know what's going to happen in these drills because they were testing new software out at the time, just conveniently. How the pilots not know that these aren't new military craft that they're testing out? We don't know that. And as it happens, if you look at how the Tic Tac was described, it was described as having pin-up tubes, which are communication devices. That's how they were described by the witnesses that saw them. And there were drones with these. You can see if you just Google the Tic Tac, or it might have been one of the others, maybe. No, I think it was the Tic Tac that's got the pin-up tubes in it, the little tubes that come out the side. Now, that's very much unlike the sources that people never really report that sort of technology. They don't seem to need that technology. And that, to me, is a red herring that this is just one of ours. And, of course, again, the pilots are on a need-to-know basis anyway.
Yeah.
This is all compartmentalized. They have no need to be disclosing anything to these pilots at all. Even the guy, the captain running the ship, it's just so top down. Even the guys that are right up there have not got all the knowledge. It's just not safe to do that.
Well, you're spot on there, to be honest with you. And you know, this when you said like the disclosure's probably already happened or it has already happened, I would agree. It's the vast majority of people are just asleep to it, because when you've got top brass military personnel stepping out and saying that they've seen these things, saying that they've seen footage, not just recently, but over decades and decades, and they're sort of shunned and laughed at. You know, I think it was Lord Hill Norton back when Rendlesham Forest were being spoken about. You know, he spoke about it in the House of Commons, and these people, it's almost as though their voices are just, well, they must be getting suppressed because it's out there. The information's there if people want to look for it. And once again, anecdotal evidence, but with the weight that these people carry in rank, and I think we've got to attach truth to it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, a couple of days ago, I watched that Cosmic Hoax by Stephen Greer.
Right.
And, you know, it's a great production in terms of like the production quality on it and everything else. And Stephen Greer's a little bit Marmite, isn't he? People love him or they hate him. And there's a lot of characters like that. In my opinion, this is very deliberate. There's a lot of characters. And look, you've got to respect him. The guy's been in this game a long, long time. And let's be honest about it. If the guy was anywhere near the real goods, he wouldn't be making films about it. That's, you know, if you look back, if you go back to look at people like Bill Cooper, for example, you don't get that close to this subject. And then are left alone to just go.
I was going to say, yeah, you're not going to get that close and gather the information and then be allowed to just go along with your normal daily life, because it just can't be shared.
No, it can't be shared. And I think the elements of the film I really like, but the fact of the matter is, I think Greer's right in the fact that he's saying that this UFO threat is being sold as a threat by the government and the powers that be, these aerospace companies. It's a threat. It's a threat. We don't know what it is. And of course, that allows them to impose new laws, and it also allows them to spend trillions of pounds and dollars on what they call Space Force. Now, just look at the history of how these companies and aerospace companies operate. What they're actually saying is, we've already done it. Now we've got a reason to justify it. Look at all this money we spent. By the way, a few years ago, we knew about the threat, and we had to put this Space Force into space and these weapons in space, which we were talking about back in 1980. So, you know, that's 40 years ago. Just imagine, and even then, when you look back at Roswell, like 47, it's like 70 years. Can you imagine what we can achieve in 70 years with that kind of technology? But there is absolutely no need to share that with the public. Again, like I said to you, these people have completely different lives than we do. It's almost like two different realities operating in here at the moment. They're just not interested in revealing that. And I think I mentioned to you, Paul, the other day about I found the film really insulting to witnesses, because
you did.
Stephen Greer, he might have his own encounters. I think he has his own encounters. He's a little bit love and light with the phenomena, and he talks about how he's got papers and proof that the government were running abduction scenarios and programs, that they were getting disfigured humans to go into people's houses and abduct them to sell this phenomena as part of the reveal 50 years later. Come on.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy.
It's nonsense, and that kind of stuff's coming from Richard Daughter, I think he's called, a guy that you wouldn't trust him. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, I mean, once you understand, no one's surprised by it. That's what I really liked about it when it came. Every ufologist out there just sort of sniggered and went, "Oh yeah, big surprise." Yeah, but the difference with Richard, I keep calling him Richard Gere. Stephen Greer that's a different guy altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone knows that story. We're not going to talk about that. But yeah, I think the fact is that Stephen Greer's not being yanked out of his bed in the middle of the night, is he? And tortured and then mentally tortured for all his life.
No.
So of course he's going to have a different opinion of it. But to just relate to like these are love and light, and I can summon them in my CE5 using CE5 protocols and all that.
It's so strange though, Chris, isn't it, that there's so many different camps. If everybody, not everybody, but if people could just agree to disagree and say, look, there might be, you might have had a good experience, but don't base the entire population on the world as your experience or your belief system, because it could have been totally different for someone else. But that's the mindset people get in. And, you know, I've been to conferences and listened to people talk, and everything's love and light, and they've actually, to point a blank in me, because I haven't got anything good to say about what happened to me personally. But I'm prepared to accept that other people could have had good experiences, but some people just can't. It's their way or no way. And just staying on this for a moment, if the phenomena with like the governments of the world are spending billions and billions of pounds looking into space for other life forms, if that's what we're doing, why is it already here? Why are they looking into space? If we've got thousands of people around the world, we've got military personnel, we've got police officers, we've got loads of highly qualified people, as well as Joe Blogs, me on the street saying they've seen things. It's here. Why are we looking into space for it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one thing we know for sure is that these guys, one, have no interest in divulging that information to the public. They benefit in no way. So how do they benefit? And they benefit by instilling fear or some sort of other agenda that benefits them. I mean, I dare say, if it's like humanity, there are races out there that are just are neither positive or negative. I think and I don't know whether you've said this before, Paul, when we've talked about this, I think the interest is probably not us. I think it's more likely the planet.
Yeah.
Is probably more of interest, because in the film, and I've read about this before and done a lot of videos on this, where they talk about UAPs downing nuclear missiles, shutting the facilities down upon launch and that sort of stuff. So you can understand that. But what I found interesting from Gray's perspective is he talks about how these nuclear explosions can actually affect dimensions. And that was really interesting. I found it really interesting, the power of them, that can affect dimensional space. Now, I don't know anything enough about physics to know whether there's any weight in that, but I thought it was an interesting perspective. And you can see why, if there were other beings and civilizations floating around, let's say it is multidimensional, and what we were doing here, well, in no way does that nuclear explosion benefit anybody.
And it has a rippling effect on their existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does it affect time? Does it open? Well, who knows what it does?
You're just poking a stick at something. You don't know what you're poking a stick at, aren't you? You know.
Of course you are, and I think I can then, in that respect, you can understand why whoever these guys are, if they did decide to shut these plants down, absolutely. But then, what is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You know, I mean, if the government hate these guys and they're a threat, we should probably like them.
Well, there's nothing changed in the subject of ufology and unexplained phenomena with that one, is there?
No, mate, there isn't. And I think, like we've said before, look, there's just no way of knowing. And I think there's probably, or I'm hoping that if they are out there, they're varied in their intentions.
Yeah. Les, have we any questions?
Yeah, I have, and we have one from Jane Louise Bowery.
Hi, Jane.
Welcome to the show, Jane. Has anyone on here seen or heard of any Sasquatch in this country?
Yeah, well, I think the person to speak to about that primarily would be anyone from the BBR. So that's the British Bigfoot research team. So there are a number of people you can speak to about that if you're interested in that. I think there are, from my understanding, I think there's probably hundreds of sightings. And from what I understand, they're ongoing and they just keep coming in. So yeah, I mean, definitely, there's plenty of sightings of the wild man. He's generally called in this country. And again, if you look hard enough, you can look into the history, and you can, at a pinch, you can find it.
Yeah.
You know, you can, and again, it's like all this stuff, isn't it? You can look at the information, and it can be how it's interpreted is a big factor in a lot of this, you know.
Well,
so,
yeah, and obviously, if we're researchers in trying to interpret things as being Bigfoot related, then we're going to bend that interpretation to our belief system. I mean, we can't be disingenuous, but we tend to want to make things the shape that we're looking at, should we say? If that doesn't sound
we do, mate. And I think that goes for just back to the disclosure thing. Look at what the Vatican did. When they realised, and they've obviously been briefed on this because they're a very powerful entity. When they got briefed on the old disclosure project, they knew that they would have to adapt to their religions and find a way of being space brothers with these guys, you know, just to keep the thing going. So
and
that's what
is
they
this
did.
when they put it out that they would sort of embrace any intelligence or that came from another realm, came from space?
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got to keep it coming in.
Yeah, you know, I mean, go on, Les.
Yeah, just one last question for this section. Rocco Motto, if that's if I pronounced it correctly. Welcome to the show, Rocco. Where is the elusive DVD available to buy, Chris?
Oh, I think it's on the website. So I think if you go to don'tmentionthereptilians.com, I think it can be bought on there. I mean, Paul and I, it's probably a good time to mention bringing down the light by Paul.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good time to mention that I know we're not ignoring everybody that keeps asking us about it. We're just trying to figure out the best way of going about releasing it again. And if I do, what's it called? If we do decide to put it on Vimeo, that will probably be accessible. But we will also be doing the DVD, I think, Paul, yeah?
I would like to. I keep getting asked. I wouldn't say every week, but quite a lot. I get asked. You know, it's in multiples. Sometimes you'll get asked 4 or 5 times a week if I've got any DVDs, which we haven't, but we ought to do. I mean, there's people asking for them, and there's an interest there for it. So, yeah, we ought to push it. Yeah. And as a side note, me and Les are still working hard at it on Wolflands. Are we not, Les?
Yes, we are, very much so.
We're all over the place. It's a monster, and it quite honestly is a monster, because as much as the amount of information that Les must have on his computer and his hard drives now is just incredible, because we've got an hard drive in week, and Les has filled an hard drive for me. I don't want to bore you too much, really, but how much footage is on that hard drive, Les?
Lots.
Lots.
Well, I'd go as far as to say we have heavy shares in Microsoft. Anybody who makes hard drives, we definitely must have shares in them.
Yeah, well, you know, we're well into a 2 terabyte hard drive just with footage there, but yeah, so it's all good. But jumping back to bringing down the light, yeah, I mean, I would like to see us get some copies. I mean, anybody just as a gauge then in the chat, if anybody's not seen it, is it something that you'd be interested in buying or looking into? Because on, what did you say, Vimeo, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, Vimeo's pretty expensive to host, but I think because Jurgenhoff film's coming out and probably Wolflands, and what the problem is here is that Amazon have sort of messed everything up, haven't they?
Yeah,
it used to be really good for distributing both streaming and physical DVDs, but the rates have just got crazy. I know a lot of filmmakers are now complaining that Amazon are snatching huge percentages of any profit that you make on a film, which you just don't. I know we always say this, but so when we put the films out and when you guys support us out there, it's you know, we're really appreciative of it, and we're going to be doing it anyway, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
but basically, we're involved in this, and I know you are, Chris and Les, because it's a passion. We enjoy doing it, and this, don't get the violins out, people. But there's no money to be made in them books. I'm not making a loss, But when you sell a book, you see it for sale on Amazon, you think, oh, that's quite dear. There's a great chunk coming off that book straight away for postage and their fees. I don't want to slate the company, but because I wouldn't do that, I am selling the books there. But the website's the way to go, truthproof.uk. But obviously, we don't want to talk about my books all night. It's the first time I've ever done it, really, on a podcast.
Well, I can run with more questions if you like, guys, or you can pick up if you want to pick up where you're going to go tonight, or I can run with some more.
Well, just one thing. Obviously, I know you touched on key locations earlier, and I've said in the books location is key. Do you think we're dealing with one single multi-phenomena intelligence? Let's assume that we've got something that's manifesting here, not something that's coming from space, something that just seems to be able to appear. I mean, you've seen these lights when they appear over at sea, Chris, and they're not just flying from anywhere, they're just appearing. But we're not just talking about the lights, we're talking about the cryptid sightings. Or are we talking about lots of different types of phenomena? What's your views?
Well, there's a saying around these subjects that says that goes something like same phenomena, different mask. And you can understand why that. I think it's a great description of what is going on here.
Yeah.
Because this shares so many of the same characteristics. But I've thought about this a lot, and probably like you, when you can't sleep, you get your head around these subjects, and you get to thinking about what this is. But I think it's different phenomena personally. I think for some things, I think there is a phenomena that might be responsible for, a handful of things. But I think things like Sasquatch, as an example, that I actually think in Canada and North America, I think it's an actual being. I don't think it's supernatural. I think it's an actual being. And I know there's talk of supernatural powers and all the rest of it. And I'm like the next guy. I think it's fascinating. And I think there's hundreds and probably thousands of witnesses that say the same thing. I don't know. Is this just a normal physical ability that they've developed telepathy? I mean,
that's what I was exactly what I was going to ask you then. So if it's a normal flesh and blood being, and I'm in no position to say it isn't, do you think then that this is a natural attribute that they've developed, the mind speak?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think it's, and the fact that you only have to look at some of the black projects that were being done decades ago into telekinesis and telepathy and remote viewing. The Stargate project that they did. If you look deep into that data and actually have a look at some of the newly declassified things that they're looking into, interestingly, just look at patents. Look at patents on Google for new technology. That, to me, when you start digging around into all that stuff, the Black Vault's a great place to go to in regards to ufology. You start digging around that stuff, you start understanding there's a lot at play here. And I think, again, I just look at the amount of species on this planet, and probably a whole lot more that we don't know about. Yeah, I think it's different types of phenomena, and the extraterrestrial thing. Some people call them ultra-terrestrials, the different dimensions, and I think there are possibly races that are traversing space intergalactically, if you want to call it that. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of everything. Which, again, skeptics now watching this with his stress ball, thinking we're just making excuses up. But we cherry pick like the skeptics cherry pick, because it's just human nature. But at least I'm aware I'm cherry picking. I look back on what I'm doing. I'm going, I've sort of made that fit into that little box, and I'm aware of it that sometimes I do that. But
I kind of do the same thing with the explanations for the UFOs from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and the staple explanations from those decades don't seem to be used anymore, do they? Yet we're still, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny that. I mean, anyone that looks into Project Blue Books knows that was just a debunking. The project was to debunk the phenomena. They actually don't keep any secrets about it now. Yeah, that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to just debunk the phenomena. So when you look at that's what they were doing. I mean, how long ago was that? And they're still doing it now. They're still doing it now. And so, yeah.
For a subject, Chris, that nobody believes exists, there's no reality to it. We devote what would have been even then for Project Blue Book probably millions of pounds to debunk it. It doesn't exist. It's not real. Why are we bothering?
Exactly. The hand was forced because this stuff was being seen so often. And again, back into history, it's not a new phenomena at all. So they're not disclosing anything that really people aren't already aware of, even albeit subconsciously. Yeah.
Right then, Les, have we any more questions, mate?
Yeah, I'll just add something of my own in there, Chris. I think myself, all this disclosure, excuse me, is that people over the years, for as long as I could remember, all these things what have been reported in the mainstream media have been usually headed by the word of silly. Do you see where I'm coming from? Yeah. So you've got that mentality in people. I think probably, I'll probably get slated for this, if an alien was sat on your front garden and you got it on your iPhone and that, everybody would be saying, what do you mean? What do you mean? What alien? They wouldn't even know it was there. Because I think the mentality of people is that they're so distanced from it. You could be showing it. Yeah.
Conditioned to think it's a joke, Les, yeah.
Can anybody understand what I'm saying here?
I think I can, yeah. You know, back in 1960s when the craters appeared around East and North Yorkshire and in other parts of the country, they employed Patrick Moore or took Patrick Moore with them to most of the crater sites. And I've said this before, but what was he there for? The actual terminology to dismiss the myths of little green men. Let's
debunk,
turn it into a joke. If those craters had appeared in this day and age, in 2021, it would have been in every paper, everywhere, and we'd have known about it all over the country, all over the world. But because there were no social media back in the 60s, it were just pockets of communities that thought, well, this is unusual. Bridlington Free Press is saying that a crater's appeared overnight. MOD have been with Geiger counters, and they've been checking it all out, and that's all it got. That paper didn't get dispersed to other parts of the country and other parts of the world, you know, and that were happening all over. But I know I've jumped from your question there, Les, but yeah, Patrick Moore were involved in most of them, and the reasoning was they wanted it to dispel the myth, should we say, of little green men.
Well, when you look at archaeology, for example, and look at the walls that were built in Peru. I don't know if you've ever seen the walls in Peru. I can't pronounce the name of this village, Sasquatch.
We're about the seamless.
Yes, the seamless wall, and it looks like it's made out of. It actually looks like it's made out of some sort of plasticine when you look at it, because the joins are so fine, and it actually looks like it's been squashed down almost. So what they've found is now that when they've analysed these rocks, they found human hair inside the rock, and they think that using certain chemicals that in some of the plants in that region, that they were able somehow they were able to melt this a little bit, like, if you want to call it, concrete, and that these things were produced by using that type of molds, if you like. Because actually, when you look at it, that wall, you look at it and think, how have those rocks been molded that way? And it's almost like what happens when something hardens after it's been really soft and it becomes bulbous, a little like plasticine. Imagine a plasticine block and you squashed it down with your hand. That's what those walls look like all together. Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. And I think, again, that's one of the things. There are loads of archaeologists out there that off the record will tell you, we don't know what that is and how they did it.
Yeah.
And it's not a secret.
I think
Zahi Hawass, the guy in Egypt, is another guy that's keeping massive secrets. Because, again, the two different streams of society here, if not more than two, that have the need to know and the power to know.
I think at some point we'll probably get Andrew Collins back, Chris, and
Yeah, he's the guy for this,
he'd be the guy to talk to about this. I mean, and he's done some incredible work, probably which has been shunned and frowned upon by a lot of people. But some of what he's been talking about over the years is getting looked at in a lot better light now, and more power to Andrew.
Absolutely, Andrew Collins and the guys that the British guys actually that he works with, Jim Vieira, the guy from the States that does the Giants. Their work is absolutely fascinating. The Giants is another subject you can get really deep into, and there's loads of evidence for that, just piles and piles of it that are just not made public. And, you know, talk to a lot of researchers that have actually had access to Smithsonian records and that kind of thing. Look at the 9-foot giant buried in Glastonbury. They actually tell you on the plaque it's a 9-foot man. Well, they call it a 9-foot man. I don't think they call him a 9-foot giant.
So this is sort of simple as it sounds when I say, what do you think the giants were? And because people are going to say, well, they were giants, weren't they, a fool? But what do you think they were? Do you think they were another race of being? Do you know?
Yeah, I think, look, again, you get back into genetics and you get back into the ancient past, and we know that we have absolutely no idea, like at least publicly, from a public educational standpoint anyway, what really went on back then. They won't even be honest about how far culture goes back. You know, there's research going on in Australia that predates all this stuff that, you know, I think the two strong, Evan Strong, and I think it's his son that look into all that stuff over there. That's incredible stuff. You're not going to see that on the school syllabus. Know, you're not going to hear any of it. I mean, just as a bit of comedy, my daughter did a thing at school. She did a presentation. They asked her to do one on Egypt. So I thought, right, I'm going to throw a few. I think we did top 10 things on the Sphinx you didn't know. The teacher was just like scratching her head, and she had to go on Google and check all this stuff and try and find all the stuff that you were fascinated by it. The kids had no idea because it's just a Sphinx to them, but you know, the hidden chambers and all that kind of stuff, she was blown away by it. And that's the difference between someone. I mean, I do that. I look at videos and I'm lucky enough to watch lectures every day, and some of it are retained because I know a little bits on loads of different subjects. I wish I had the ability to retain and specialize in one particular subject, but I just don't. I've just not got the time to do it. But people like Andrew Collins, the knowledge they've got, and the way actually we've talked about how they converse and the way they speak, how eloquent they are, and how they can put things across. And I mean, it's horses for courses. Some people are into that, some people are not. But yeah, I think he's great, Andrew Collins. I think he's done some great research, and Hugh Newman as well.
Les, have we any more questions for Chris?
Yes, let's have a look. Another one from John Carpenter. Chris, any sightings in Kielder Forest? Going back to the Kielder Forest area.
In Kielder, I'm not so sure in Kielder, but I believe the adjacent forest, which I believe is Harwood Forest. Yeah, I think there's been sightings up there, and I think there's a couple of Neil Young actually I think he was one of the original founders of the British Bigfoot research. Now, Neil Young, I believe, has had a sighting up there because I think he took Finding Bigfoot. The Finding Bigfoot crew actually flew over to look into that, and you won't be surprised when I tell you that they arrived and didn't even walk into the forest. I mean, I like those guys, like Cliff and the other is it Bob? What is he called?
Yeah.
The big guy. I actually quite like those guys. They seem like quite sound and solid guys. But
do you think they're doing subjects any good? Howling and banging on trees and.
I don't know about that. I think. Look, I know credible researchers that do that sort of stuff. I think, and they'll tell you. Cliff Berrickman will tell you. I've heard him say it that there's a little bit of theatre. Look, I think that's what we have to understand, and it's the one thing that we do, and I've never done, and I don't actually. The guys from Small Town Monsters have never done it. The guys that actually make films within the subject never sensationalize anything. They never put, at the beginning for entertainment purposes only. That's what I was saying before about having some actual, at least if I try and get the cats and I manage to get one on camera, you're actually saying to the audience, look, we've managed to do this. This is an actual piece of evidence. This is not a blurry picture of a bush. you know, it's not a picture. Don't get me on the sticks. It's not a bunch of sticks, you know, that we found 4 images of that happened to match because we twisted the photograph around a little bit. It's nothing like that. It's actual concrete evidence. So yeah, I think they are actually doing the subject good because they're just putting it into the wider consciousness.
I think we need more than the pareidolia, don't you, Chris? You know, I mean, we can see things. We can look at a cloud and see an angel, can't we? You know, I mean, and I've had pictures sent to me. I believe with really good intention, and I've always been polite, but I can't see a Bigfoot in the picture or a dog man. I could probably see one if I looked hard enough somewhere else in picture in some grainy bit of shading and things. I think what we've got to get is some definite images where there's no mistaking. Went to London Zoo and took a picture of the chimps. We'll not be getting some grainy thing behind a bit of foliage, will we? We'll know exactly what we're looking at. And that's what we should be striving for in these forests. I mean, all right, it's difficult. We've been spending nights and nights in them. I've got a report from Harwood Forest myself, haven't I? I've told you about it, and I think I've spoken about it on the show with the mountain bikers. That were going. And what I found interesting about that report and the gamekeeper's report from a forest not too far away is that they saw no movement, no leg movement. That's what I find interesting. The mountain bikers described this thing as looking like a huge, as big as a bear, just moving down at the side of them, 30 foot away in bracken. And you've been in these forests. I know that people within this chat will have been in them, else they won't be asking questions. They're undulating. There's divots and ruts. There's the waterlogged. There's logs. This thing's just going as though it's on a smooth track. Well, as they're going down, jumping fire breaks and everything, described it as just looking at them. Similar thing to the foxholes, what we call the foxholes werewolf, the car chaser, the guy who's in his Jaguar car. It's running at the side of his car, looking at him. He couldn't get his head around how it were doing that. Actually turned its face full in while it's going forward. It kind of doesn't seem possible, does it? But they're telling you an absolutely outlandish story, and then adding even more outlandishness to it. You know, I mean, the gamekeeper's absolutely solid. Les will tell you that is straight John Bull guy. If it's happened, it's happened. But it don't come out with, I saw it walk out of the forest. It came out of the forest, and if you moved a torch down, that's as it looked. He said, as smooth as that. Don't recall seeing its legs moving. And that's a bit that I find fascinating. That kind of throws it into the supernatural realms. For me, there's something different there. Okay, let's go
ahead.
Chris, did you want to come in there?
No, I was going to come in just to mention a military witness that I spoke to. I don't know whether I ever mentioned it about. This is a reptilian sighting. Just because we're just talking about the strange and how witnesses that have no need to include information that just doesn't fit. You know, do you know what I mean? They don't need to sensationalize it. It's sensational on its own. I don't know whether I ever mentioned in the last interview that I did with you were about the guy at Barker Barracks in Paderborn.
No, you didn't. No, sorry,
did I mention that? Yeah, the guy, this guy, he came to meet me at a conference actually. He said, I've been watching your stuff. He said, I'm gonna. He said, I'll let you record me, but I don't want to go on camera. Actually, as it happens, I had to blur his face out on the video. But he woke up. He was sharing his room with 2 other guys. So there's 3 of them in the barracks, sharing the room. The 2 other guys had gone on nights out. So he woke up on, I think it was a Sunday morning, and he said it was early on Sunday morning, and he said the sun was just coming up, just shining into the window, and he was awake, and he looked up and saw this reptilian humanoid figure stood there about 6.5, 7 foot. I think he said it were. But what was interesting about it, that it was semi-transparent, so he could see through it. Yeah. And then wearing around it, and then he started to add details about. And here's I'll add this a little bit at the end. Around its belt, it had like cylinders, metal cylinders, about 15, 16 of them on that made up this little belt. And he said when it clocked him, he got the thought into his mind to sleep because he saw it. He turned and looked at him, obviously realised that it had been seen. Still semi-transparent, and he said that after he woke up and had to think about it, he believed that it had communicated in this such a small space of time, or what he believes was a small space of time, where he says he woke up what he believes to be 10 minutes later. And the reason he knew that is because of where the sun was in the sky. It was almost in the same place. So he's guessing here 10 minutes. And he just said that he believed it had communicated to him and it had told him what this device did. And he said that whatever these tubes were, they enabled it to bend light around its body. Now, he had no reason to add this little bit in. He had no reason. He was actually shaking. In the end, he left the military because of this encounter. If you want to hear that, you can. If you go onto my YouTube channel, it's on there. But this guy's absolutely. You know when you meet those witnesses that are absolutely solid like this, and he goes on to talk about what happened after the event and just those little bits that he added, and he had no need to state that and say that he thought that it was disclosing let's up a little bit, and he believed that it told him it was on a reconnaissance mission. Now, why add that in? The sighting itself is strange enough. You know, it's just sorry, I just thought that was. I should mention.
So it's on a reconnaissance mission, and it had infiltrated a military. Well, not a complex, but base or camp.
Well, that's what frightened him so much. He said that he lay in his bed for 10 minutes. He couldn't get out of the bed. He said he was absolutely terrified because the two guys were out of there. So he had to. I think he got his some of his some weights. I can't remember the name. Webbings, it's called. Yeah. Inside of the webbing, they had these weights, and he picked up the weights because he was absolutely. He said I was absolutely terrified. And he just left. He got up because he didn't know whether this thing's still in the room. So he gets up and leaves. He gets out of the room eventually into the corridor, and then he realizes, what is he going to do now? What does he do now? He says, because for a split second, do I go and report this? Because this is this classed as intrusion? As someone like you said, I'm deemed my duty is to now report this. He said he went in the toilet. He's wet and he used to splash his face. He's thinking, what am I going to do? He's panicking. What am I going to do? And he said, I couldn't go back in the room. He said, the first thing I could think of was just to go to my mate who was just down the corridor. And he said, I couldn't bring myself to leave his side. He said he must have thought, oh, weird. He said, I just wanted to be around someone. Yeah. And it's just listening to him.
Did he feel amazing. Like that? I don't know how much you spoke to him, Chris, but did he feel like it was still there? It was still observing?
Afterwards, no, he just said the fear took over. He just said, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to, he said, I can't add in things and that didn't happen. It's just I think he just put it down to training, but this guy's really eloquent how he tells his story and describes it. And in the end, he just said it was realizing that there was something else out there that could just be on the base. So simple that we didn't, he said, and I knew that we didn't know about it.
It makes you wonder about the people that just simply vanish, you know, and out just without trace, they've just gone. And you know, and then we've got the rock angler from 2020, I think it was 2020, just a few miles up the coast, fishing late at night, and people will have heard me talk about this. He looks, it's a raging sea, and he sees this tall, slim figure walking towards him. I think it was just after midnight or just before midnight. He's crouched down because it's cold weather. He stands up, this thing stops, and in his words, it pixelated and vanished. And he is absolutely terrified. And he said, I pulled my little fishing knife out and I'm packing my things up and I'm ringing my dad to come and pick me up. And he felt that it was still there around him. You know, and he felt like that when he got home as well. He felt like it were watching him. That could be paranoia. I'd probably feel the same myself, you know, but just the talk of these translucent stroke, semi-translucent beings is quite incredible. I spoke to, didn't speak, we exchanged correspondence, and I think she's in one of the Hunted, is it? The Pleiades film, the lady in the stand, the hunting stand, the tree stand, and she saw this translucent being or translucent shape walking towards her. And I asked her if she thought it knew she were there, and she doesn't actually think it were there, and she got no perceived feelings of mind speak or anything like that. I mean, I think people know who it was anyway, don't they? You know who that was, Chris?
I do. I can't grab the name.
It was Jan Maccabee.
Yeah, Bruce Maccabee's missus.
Yes.
Yeah, because didn't something appear on the camera as well?
I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
I think something appeared on the camera that couldn't physically have even gotten on it.
Yeah, and then you've got the trail cams and the people searching for the cryptids in America, particularly. I can't think who it was that he'd left some fruit out, and 1 second it had gone. 1 second it were there, and in the next shot it had gone. And there's nothing on the camera to show how it's gone. You know, it's nuts, isn't it? You know,
it is, and all we can do. I mean, again, just because I'm recounting these stories the way I'm recounting them and just giving an opinion, it doesn't. There are no answers. It's just
anecdotal.
That's why it's anecdotal, and that's why we love it. No one's right, no one's wrong. It's just it is what it is, but we just love talking about this stuff. So
yeah, Rob Scarlett's just said it was Bruce Maccabee's wife. Yeah, hi Rob. Yeah. And any more questions, Les?
Yeah, I think I might be able to just add something to that, because I think the account goes is that her son was actually playing on a sports ground nearby, and there was actually a UFO sighting around about that time that she saw the translucent being.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Right, I'll move on. Thanks for that, guys. Let's have a look. What have we got? Right. Mark Rhodes is asking, does Chris know anything about the Welsh Bigfoot?
Well, I mean, the Welsh Bigfoot, I've always put it under the same umbrella as British Bigfoot. And obviously I spoke to, if you haven't seen Elusive, there is some footage by a guy called Bigfoot Tony, who used to be quite prevalent actually in the British Bigfoot scene. And I think he's having a break from it at the minute, I hope, because he's a really nice guy actually. He's a really knowledgeable guy as well. But I think the infight, Bigfoot Tony used to do a lot of analysis on videos, and I think the infighting from the Americans, and then I think there's a little bit of that going on, and it happens in every country. It's not just, it's part of the subject, I guess, part of the culture. I think it just got to him in the end, and I think he stopped putting videos out because he had the video in Elusive of what he thought at the time was a Bigfoot shaking a tree is in Elusive. You can see that footage. And I don't know whether it's still on Bigfoot Tony's channel. It may well be, because it's his footage. He just allowed us to use it in the film. So, I've spoke to him since about that. He's not so sure whether it's just pareidolia. It's interesting that the tree is actually shaking, and it's like you can see it bending at the top if you look at the top of the tree and watch it bend. But it comes down to he was never attempting to film that. It just happened. But this is the thing about what we're talking about video. When stuff like that happens, when you capture something on film and you weren't intending to, that can be forgiven. Do you know what I mean? He happened to be out of focus, and he was actually filming, I think, a piece of foliage at the time. That can be forgiven. But if, like you, Paul, and I've been sent, it might be the same guy, it might not be, but I've been sent images from a guy that believes he knows where a group of these cryptids are. He's been researching them for years and years and years, but yet he can't provide one decent photograph. And I'm not saying that they're not there. I'm just saying that if he wants people to believe him, which I think he does, the best way to do it is to get a clear photograph. I'm not saying that's easy, because I don't know that the phenomena or whatever it is affecting him or the camera. Who knows? Only he knows that. But I think if you're going to send photographs to someone like myself or you or whoever else, I think you should probably add in, look, sorry, the picture isn't this. That's because I either cropped it, or the situation, I was scared, or whatever. I think if there's mitigated circumstances, then say so. Don't, because otherwise I'm just going to look at it and go, this guy's pulling my leg here. I think.
Yeah, I look at it, well, same as you, but then I look at the branches that these things we're expected to believe that these things are hiding in, and the twigs. And that's come from more than one source. So I'm not sort of trying to put anybody down here, but you can't run with it. I can't put a picture up or write about something when the only proof I've got, because somebody can shoot you down because you can see a sapling in the background and you can see a pile of twigs and what could be the shape of a dog's head in darkness. But I could see loads of those shapes. but none of them are dogs' heads. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you know, it's
it
like we
does,
talked about earlier, Chris. I'm sorry for cutting through you there, but you know, if we went to London Zoo and took a picture of the animals in the foliage, then we would be able to. Or if I had to go to Danes Dyke tomorrow and take some pictures of deer in the trees, you know, you will know that it's a deer. You will see the ears stuck up in the muzzle or the back end of a deer. But with these images, no person in particular, but with that type of image, there's nothing to tell us apart from an overactive imagination, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there may well be mitigating circumstances in those. And if there is, then I'd sooner people mention that. And, you know, and sometimes if for this particular guy, if you know where they are, then there are various ways that you can attempt to get evidence. It might be audio. It might, you know, might be that's the way you do it. It might be trail cam. It might be there's numerous different ways. It could be gift. Who knows? Whatever. I don't know the area. I don't know his research. And why would I? Because a lot of guys are very private about that.
Yeah.
Some things I keep to myself. Some things you do. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's being honest is not being. It's not being critiquing anyone in a negative manner. I'm just being honest and saying I received some photos. I'd love to put them in the film if they're genuine and if they're good. And I don't, you know, if you've got them, send them. By all means, I'll look into it.
You need more proof.
I just need a little bit more. Sorry. Yes, it's just where, you know, because I'm the guy that takes the brunt of it. At the end of the day, I'm the guy that gets abused for it.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Again.
Right, yeah, that's great. I've got to thank you all who's donated through the super chat tonight. Thank you very much. It helps us trying to improve these streams, and it's fantastic that you've actually come on to watch the stream and you're enjoying it. So that's great. I've also got to say, please press the like button, press the subscribe button, okay, and that will go somewhere into getting our algorithms up there so these videos get out and about. And please share the video if you can as well. I've got to move on to another question now, and it's taking us back to the top of the show, Chris. It's regarding the sheep kills in Scotland. Have UFO or ground lights been seen near these kills?
I don't have that information. I'll be honest with you. I don't have that information. This is someone else's research. Again, like I said before, it is in the infancy. So I think Chris, who's looking into that stuff, he hasn't mentioned anything like that to me. But again, obviously, that it's not to say that it isn't. And of course, I think Chris, gets himself. He's one of those guys that gets around a lot because he runs and does marathons, that sort of stuff. So I don't know whatever before this whether he's actually frequented a particular area. And as you know, you've got to be doing this day after day after day in the same location if you're gonna, you know, if something is happening, which is very, very difficult to do.
And he's probably not, Chris, actually looked into the possibility of other types of phenomena displaying within that same location, you know, that same zone. And he might not be even interested in doing that. It's probably just these sheep deaths that have caught his attention. But I think it's something, if you're going to do some work with him, that you ought to be looking into, because I bet you find that other phenomena are manifesting.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that probably will come up at some point. The more, I mean, Chris might need a lot longer to look into that. I mean, Chris is really being a bit of a guide for me, because it's the place that we're looking into is near is opposite Ben McDowey. Yeah. So that's where we're going, doing some wild camping up there. So incidentally, that place is called the Devil's Penis. So,
oh, lovely.
Yeah, but whatever. Again, not that bit, but the devil's bit. You know, again, you look at the Pleiades research, wherever the devil is mentioned. Yeah. You know.
Well, it's what, like we've said in Wolflands, these places don't get called by the name of the wolf or by the name of the devil. If they're called, it's not because they're butterflies. They're not called Butterfly Meadow, are they? Do you know what I mean?
You make a good point. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, the name, they've got these names attached to them because of probably bad or unusual things, sinister things that have took place there in the past. Yeah, I know in America, close to Skinwalker, when I've spoke to Larry Sespooch, the Native American Indian, he lived near a place called Dead Man's Curve, where a lot of unusual phenomena took place there, you know, and the name says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, Les, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for that. And that last question actually came from Lee Roscoe. Thanks for
Thank
that
you,
question,
Lee.
Lee. Yeah. I've got a question from, I can't pronounce this, but it's BC Itral, BCITRAL. The question is, what do you think of the, I could be pronouncing this wrong, Lakota files? Do you know anything about them?
But I don't.
Yeah.
So let Chris fire away with this.
Yeah, I know the Lacerta files because years back when I was researching for the first Reptilian film, I did a lot of digging trying to find out the original publisher of those files. They've since been made into audio files actually, and this is an alleged interview with a real reptilian alien. This is what it's meant to be, and yeah, I mean, in those circles, I think it's probably about a 50-50 split about whether or not this stuff is legit. Imagine, you know, the film.
Is this the black and white film, Chris? Is this the black and white film?
No, it's not a film. It's not a film.
No.
It's transcript actually.
Right. Okay.
Which is why it received a little bit of criticism, as you can imagine. Well, where's the original recording? Because part of the in the recording, she actually reveals a reptilian form in the script. So this has now been turned. You know the text to voice software that people use now, the AI stuff. If you want to listen to that, it's a really interesting. Whoever's created it, I actually think it's fake, to be fair, but it's a very interesting piece of. There's a lot of information there, but there's nothing in there that you couldn't. If you're a little bit into astrology and you did a bit of digging around, you could definitely create something like that if you really wanted to. Nonetheless, you know, I've no proof that it's fake, and I couldn't find the original guy. I got as far as a guy in Scandinavia, and I couldn't get any further than that.
Okay. Questions, Les?
Yeah, that's. Let's have a look then. We've got. Just one for you, Paul. When's the new book out, Paul?
The new book. We should be a few months away, I think. I'm quite looking forward to getting it out of the way. I've got Don Lodge pushing me quite often every day, to be honest with you, and rightly so. You know, we've got tons on, but Don's instrumental in the book. I mean, I can't thank him enough for helping me. But there's lots of new accounts. Obviously we're covering East and North Yorkshire, but we have some accounts, as I've said before, they're just too good not to use. You know, there's a cryptid sighting on a military base close to Scotland, and you know, there's lots of different stuff. We've got the light forms, the cats, the cryptids. It's a mixture of them all, and yeah, in a few months' time, I would hope. And we keep toing and froing between subtitle because it's truth proof for, but I think it's going to be truth proof for the fantasy of reality. That may change, but we shall see.
I'll just buy it on the title alone, I think.
And I see Laura's in, my daughter. Hi, Laura.
Hey,
and I think Jessica's in as well. Hi,
Jessica. Yeah. And let's have a look then. We've got a few questions in still. I don't know if we've got time to get them all in, but I'm going to give it a go. Question, Chris Turner. I've been telling my friends about your documentary, Don't Mention the Reptilians. I think it was originally called. Do you sell it as a DVD?
Yeah, I do. It's on the website. If you go to don'tmentionthereptilians.com, it's on there. You can grab it from there. The American name of that. If you want to watch it for free, because I don't own the rights to it now. If you want to watch it for free, you can. I think it's free on Amazon. It's called Alien Reptilian Legacy, so you can watch it for free on there if you've got Prime, I think.
And now, isn't that an example of a decent kind of genuine bloke there? You can buy it from my website, but if you want to watch it for free, I think that tells you a lot about Chris Turner. No, I think it does.
Yeah, I've just done my stuff out of about £8.
Just before we go on to another question, Les, just before we go on to another question, have you got any other merchandise that you want to be telling us about, Chris?
No, not as such. I mean, it is something that I'd like to get into, but again, it's all about time, and I don't know whether merchandise. I mean, merchandise.
Well, films, documentaries.
Yeah, I mean, it's just these things are a way of just allowing us to facilitate the process of doing what we're doing, the investigating, and the filmmaking and merchandising and films. I don't know how popular it is, but anything that raises a bit of cash is good. So yeah, it's something I've looked
It's got to
into
be.
doing.
Les is spending a fortune on equipment. I've spent £3,000 on cameras this year.
Yep.
Anyway, fire away, Les. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, Ricky. That question was from Ricky84. Thanks for the question, Ricky. A question from David Sadler. Did Chris ever see the video of the werewolf on Nationwide in the 1970s? And it's Hexman Roman heads.
No, not familiar with that. No, I've never heard of that.
I've never seen that. If David could actually provide a link, if it's on YouTube or anything like that, I'd be, and I'm sure you guys would be.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. If you can put
willing to see what that's all about. Great question, though, David. Yeah. Right. Okay. A question from Joey Hayes. Paul, Chris, any opinions on the angel hair phenomena? Reports around a minority of sightings, sometimes reported as snow.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's as prolific now, but the angel hair phenomena, I think that was something that were reported. What, in the 50s and 60s, the wispy, almost like gossamer cobweb type substance that disappeared. I mean, it could have been cobwebs. You know, like when spiders are sort of really prolific, who's to say it weren't that? I don't know enough about it, Joey, to give you a formed opinion. But I know a lot of ufologists at the time reported the UFO sighting and angel hair. You know, but I don't know whether it were ever analysed. I'm assuming somebody must have conducted some tests on it.
Yeah, I think it was analysed. I think there's a famous case in Argentina. I think the one around the football stadium. I think there's a famous case. I don't know I can't remember the name of the team now. One of the Real teams, I think.
What
But
year,
yeah,
Chris? Sorry, what decade? Because I could be wrong there when I said 50s and 60s.
No, I think you're in the zone. I think you're in the ballpark.
Right. Okay.
Definitely before the 80s and all that.
Yeah.
I think it's before 70s, if I'm honest as well. Yeah. But yeah, I remember. I think I've made a video on that case, and they did analyse the stuff because, as you said about the spiders, it was one of the excuses put forth by some scientists. I don't think it stood up, to be honest.
No.
But I have seen this. You know, we've all probably seen the pictures from Australia when it happens over there, and it is bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Chris. I'm conscious of the time now, guys. Bob Scaife is asking, is Bempton still active, Paul?
I would think that it probably is. I mean, there's not a lot. It's a difficult one to say, isn't it? Because you can go up there for 6 months, I've said before, and see nothing. But in that time period, somebody will ring me and say something happened. I got a report from North Landing on Sunday night of a tube of light seen over the sea. But they had gone specifically to look for UFOs, to look for the lights, and they were leaving. And as they're walking back up the path, and we'll probably get this person on chat at some point, Les, but as they're walking back up the path to go to their car, they tell me that this thing appeared. And they watched it, I don't know time frame, but they watched it appear 4 or 5 times, and once from behind a dark cloud. Now, I've only got that person's word on this. I'm not saying that they're not telling truth, because, once again, I've come out with loads and loads of sightings from up and around that area. Yes, I think it's active. These places are active all the time. The only problem is I can't be there 24/7. I'm just there for a small sort of window area.
Right, okay. Yeah, well, thanks for that, Paul. Question from Jet Black Orange. Paul and Chris, what do you think about David Icke's idea that we all live and are part of a hologram? Who wants to start with that one?
Well, I'll let Chris just start and finish with it.
Well, I can't remember the author of the book. In fact, the book might be right on that shelf there. I read it a while ago. I don't know if you've read that, Holographic Universe. Have you read that?
No.
I think it's by someone Talbot, rings a bell, the surname. But that's a fascinating book, and I think that the actual theory about the hologram it's actually receiving a lot of press at the moment in mainstream science. And I think that might be because of the advancing of quantum physics and all the rest of it. There's a lot of these. Is it related to the UAP stuff? Is it related to the phenomena, the fact that all this stuff's coming out now? And through, I don't know, crash retrievals, for example, or deals, if you believe the Eisenhower thing, if that ever happened. I know he refused at this alleged deal for technology, some people say, but I don't know. But is this how this is all happening? I mean, look at how we've advanced in such a small space of time. Even look at what's in your hand most nights. It's taken over our lives. It's not a good thing.
Just use a can of beer or something like that, is it?
No, no. I mean, that's a great invention.
I know what you're talking about. I know. All right, go on, Les. We've just about fit one in, can we?
We've got 5 minutes. We'll probably get a couple more in. Paul, let's have a look. From Lisa Rod. Paul, for those who haven't heard it yet, please tell us about the Leconfield Triangle Pyramid. I don't know if something you want to go through at this late stage.
I think, Lisa, we're going to have to do that one probably next week or in another live stream, because it probably would take at least 15-20 minutes to go through. But anybody who listened to Johnny Summers retell the story, it's Johnny's account of what happened on the RAF base in November 1980. Basically, him and 2 other Army cadets observed a pyramid-shaped object, 10 foot by 10 foot, 3-sided, land in close proximity to where they were on the outskirts of RAF Leconfield. So it was witnessed by military personnel as well. But that's just in a nutshell. But we'll expand on it.
Okay, thanks, Lisa, for the question. Question from Warren Hardcastle: has Chris or Paul seen the Mark Barton interview after his interaction with the Bigfoot?
I have, yeah, and if he's not lying, he's a brilliant actor. Have you seen it, Chris?
Is that the when he goes camping in that woods on his own, in the cabin? Is that the guy from Trail to Bigfoot? Is it called?
Yeah, and it's funny you should say it, because today I watched another video by other researchers who work alongside him, who'd also had experiences where the intelligence behind whatever he's supposed to have had interacting with him messed with them as well, messed with their heads, followed them home. And they're sort of, I would have thought, the bolstering what he's saying and his story. It's quite a moving account. I'm not asking everybody to believe it, but whoever thought of the question, look in chat and find it on YouTube and watch for yourself. I'm not sure what it's on. Is it on Bigfoot Odyssey?
Yeah. I think Danielle.
They interview him. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's worth listening to.
Great, thanks. And where am I up to? Question from East Yorkshire UFO Hunters.
Oh, Pandy, you're all right.
When is the next Awakening conference, Chris?
Well, I can't say too much about that because it's not my gig. I do work with the guys that run it. And what I can tell you is that they're trying the best. Obviously, all these conferences around the world now are being impacted by things put in place around COVID, and they don't know, and they certainly can't afford. They lost, I won't go into amounts of money, but a lot of companies lost money having to cancel events. So they're obviously a bit dubious to do one. And obviously, as you probably saw, they were trying until the government again moved the goalpost. So they lost start with it because it's a big financial risk to try and do that. However, I think at some point they will be doing, even if it ends up being a virtual one, they will do one. And I have toyed with the idea of doing something myself. So that's something to probably think about. Paul and I have thrown ideas around. There's nothing in concrete or anything like that. We've just discussed
We have spoken about it. Right. I think Les has wanted to draw this to a close, Chris. I'd just like to say before we do, as quickly as possible, thank you for stepping in last minute, Chris. Really,
you're welcome, mate. You're welcome.
And thank you to Deborah, Andy, Les, and that's out from me. Thank you.
Yep. I'll echo exactly what Paul has said. Thanks everybody for coming into the stream tonight, and thank you mostly to Chris Turner for coming on last minute, as Paul had said. And I've got to thank you two guys myself. And thank you very much. Well, what a great show tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. I've got to really say thanks for the super chat. It's going to immensely help us do what we need to do here to advance all what we're doing here at this end. And I've got to say, have a great weekend, and we will be back next time when we're on air, which will probably be next week. Don't miss the show. The show will be out early on in the week. Please share the video, press smash the like button, smash everything, every button on YouTube, just so we can get out there. We've got some great guests. I'm not giving anything away here, but we've got some great guests coming further down the line, and it's going to be phenomenal. It's been a great show with Chris Turner tonight. So on behalf of Paul and Chris and myself, Les, good night.